So let me start with something a little uncomfortable. So if you have been looking at the world lately and thinking, why does everything already feel rushed, tense, and slightly unstable? Well, you're not imagining it. Because here's the strange part. The fire horse year hasn't even started yet. And yet, you've seen recently the governments are moving early, deals are being forced, and decisions are being made under pressure that doesn't feel fully formed. So here's the real question, whether the fire horse has already arrived. And the real question is this: what happens when people start acting like the pressure has already peaked when it actually hasn't? And that's what I want to talk about in this video today. Now, first of all, quick disclaimer, okay? So before we go further, I'm not a politician. I'm not here to take sides or push opinions. All I'm doing is to speak purely from a Qimen practitioner's perspective. So don't get personally attached to what I'm sharing. And this is not about being right or wrong, good or bad. It's only about understanding structure and pressure. Okay, does that sound good? Okay, so 奇门遁甲. What is 奇门遁甲? Okay, if 奇门 is new to you, don't worry, I'm not going to get technical. You don't need to understand the actual terminology. In fact, you don't need to memorize anything when you're consuming this video. All I'm saying is that 奇门 is just a situational analysis tool. So many people ask this question. So based on what's happening now, what will happen next? While 奇门遁甲 doesn't look at that. The Qimen practitioners will only ask this question: who is doing what right now? Who is under pressure? And who has room to move? So Qimen looks at the roles: who is acting, who is being at a point, and who has leverage, and who is stuck. And that's why it works surprisingly well for business decisions, negotiations, and even geopolitics. So as I go through this, if you hear the words such as palace or door, please don't stress about them. All I'm doing is to translate what matters in plain language that even a 5-year-old can understand. Alright? So back to the term fire horse. Let me just clarify this term fire horse for everybody. Okay? So a lot of people actually have been saying recently, it already feels like the fire horse year has come. And I understand why. Because technically speaking, the fire horse year hasn't started yet. The calendar is very precise. It's 4th of Feb 2026. But what has started is the pressure that belongs to the fire horse year. So you see, pressure doesn't wait for days. You don't suddenly feel stressed because the calendar flips. Stress builds quietly, then shows itself through behavior. And that's what we are seeing right now in the world. It's not the fire horse that arrives early, but the condition that belongs to it already has formed. Okay, so now let's talk about the Qimen analysis here. Okay, so to make sense out of this, I need to explain a little bit about how I assign the countries in the Qimen chart. So I'm using what we call a Qimen global chart or annual chart for global in 2026. Okay, that signals the fire horse year. And in Qimen, we don't assign countries based on the geography or ideology. Okay, what I'm doing is to assign them based on the role they are playing in specific situations. Okay, so let me ask this very simple question: who is shaping the environment? Who is applying pressure? Who holds the resource? And who is stuck? So with that in mind, I'm going to look at 3 key players here: China, United States, and Venezuela. Okay, so what I'm doing here can be different from other Qimen practitioner. It doesn't make me right or wrong. All I'm saying is that I'm using my basis to come up with this analysis. And let's talk about China. So in the Qimen chart, I'm going to put China in the East Palace. Now you don't need to remember the label. What matters is what this position represents. So the East Palace is about momentum, long-term movement, and shaping conditions quietly. So you can see in this tussle between the US and Venezuela, China is not rushing. China isn't making any noise. China is not even forcing the move. Instead, it is watching how others behave under pressure, thinking several steps ahead, and choosing not to act too early. So what's inside this East Palace points to strategy and restraint. Not because China cannot act, of course not, but because China understands the danger of moving before the timing is right. So if you have seen someone before who wins simply by waiting while others are rushing, you understand what I'm talking about, this kind of energy. Okay, so that's China. Now back to the West Palace, the United States. So I'm going to put you as in the West Palace. Again, don't worry about the what is West Palace here. The West Palace is about negotiation, enforcement, and control through agreements. So this move isn't military, it is contractual. It's leverage applied through systems, legality, and terms. So inside the West Palace, we see force being used, but in a controlled way. We also see signs of backlash later. In simple terms, this kind of movement often works in short term, but it creates consequences that don't show up immediately. So if you have ever agreed to something that looked fine at the first, and only later you realize what it cost, well, this is what the pattern I'm talking about. Okay, so Venezuela, South Palace. Now let's talk about South Palace here. And I choose South Palace because it relates to visibility and exposed resources. Obviously, you and I know that Venezuela has a huge oil reserve. Oil fits this perfectly. So here's the thing. Venezuela isn't really directing what's happening. It's being acted upon, as you can see from the news. Inside this palace, what happened is that the chart shows containment and forced stillness. It shows decisions being handled through others. Now we call it immobilization, not collapse. And immobilization is very dangerous because pressure keeps building with no release. So if you've ever been included in a decision but had no control, real control I mean, you should understand what I'm talking about. Now, after I've chosen these three palaces, now I put them together, okay? The East, the West, and the South. What are the three key messages from this saga between the US and Venezuela? Well, let's first of all look at this from the three rows side by side, and then let's see what the messages are. Okay, so here's the first message. This is not a resolution. What we are seeing right now is a temporary control. So things look managed on surface. Deals are being announced. Statements are being made. You see the news every single day. But underneath, nothing has actually settled. Pressure hasn't been released. It's just been pushed forward in time. And this is the kind of control that works for now, but quietly carries consequences in the future. And these consequences don't disappear just because they are delayed. So the second message is this. It's about timing. So someone, you know who, is moving too early. You can see impatience clearly in this chart. Not desperation or whatever, it's just purely impatience. So pressure is building and someone decides they can't wait any longer. They move before the situation has fully clarified. And this is a classic mistake under the fire horse pressure. Acting early feels decisive, right? But it often locks in problems that didn't need to exist yet. So in period 9, speed without timing is expensive. Okay, so third message. The third message is about restraint. Someone is choosing not to move. And you know who I'm talking about. And this part is very easy to miss because restraint doesn't look impressive. It doesn't look headlines. It doesn't make headlines, by the way. But in the chart, restraint is intentional. So someone is watching, letting others expose themselves, and letting pressure rise a little more before committing. So that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means timing is being respected. And once again, in fire horse year, timing matters more than force. So when you combine these three messages, you see the pattern becomes very, very clear. And this is exactly how fire horse energy starts to show itself. It doesn't begin with explosion or dramatic collapses. It begins with impatience, with people feeling the pressure and deciding they can't wait anymore. Guess what? This is where mistakes are usually made. And fire horse energy doesn't punish people for being weak, but it punishes people for acting too early, before the pressure has fully formed and before the situation has actually clarified itself. So if this way of looking at things resonates to you, while I share more breakdowns like this regularly on my channel, well, similar approach, less noise, more about structures and pattern using Qimen Dunjia. So if you ask again, has the fire horse year started already? Well, clearly, technically, the answer is no, until 4th of Feb 2026. But you and I have felt that the pressure that belongs to it has already shaped decisions. And this is a compression phase, not the climax. In period 9, the more expensive mistake isn't being slow. To me, it's just moving too early. So if this helped you see what's happening a little bit clearer, so I will appreciate you can click like to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, and share this video with other people who may be interested in understanding structures and patterns. And of course, Qimen Dunjia as the tool. Now, once again, we are not here predicting the future. It's not meant to be like that. What we are doing is to understand structure before it forces action. And right now, that matters more than ever. So stay thriving in period 9, fire horse year. I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.